Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Hello, you're welcome to today's edition of Money Radio on Leadership Podcast. Money Radio is a program that brings you the latest developments in Nigeria's business and economy cycles and issues of businesses around the world. My name is Innocent Odo, and today we're going to take a look at a very critical sector of the Nigerian economy, the textile and garment industry in the country. And we're looking at how we can revive this very important sector to boost the Nigerian economy, especially now that the country needs this sector to add value as a result of the dwindling fortunes of the country in the oil sector. I am not alone in the studio. I am here with a gentleman that will help us do justice to this very important topic. But before we do that, it will interest you to know that the textile and garment industry in the country in the 70s and 80s used to be very dominant in terms of the employment opportunities it offered to the Nigerian people. Now, apart from the public sector, the garment and textile industry has, offered more opportunities for the Nigerian people. That was in the 70s and the 80s. We understand that over 500,000 Nigerians were either directly or indirectly involved in the job creation sector of this very important industry. But today, a different thing has happened altogether, as our people will say. A lot of water has passed under the bridge. This sector can hardly even offer job employment to about 10,000 people. Yes, we understand that there are some interventionist programs, especially that of the Central Bank of Nigeria. In 2020, the CBN made a fund of 50 billion naira available for this sector to be revived. How much of that has gone into the revival of this sector? My colleagues and I will have to investigate and interrogate that matter. The CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele at a point also stated that about 620,000 direct and indirect jobs have been created in this sector from 2020 to 2021, just about a year plus, approximately 2 years of that interventionist program. So we're going to look at why this important sector has remained at the backwaters of the Nigerian economy. And of course, there's a danger signal coming from some parts of Africa, if we put it that way, because the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that Nigeria is part of, that was signed in 2019, made it possible that nations of Africa can actually produce their goods and services and be able to market them in different parts of Africa. And we understand very well also that Nigeria is not playing very well in this sector. Therefore, nations like Ethiopia, Kenya, Tunisia, Morocco, South Africa, and Egypt have already taken charge of this important sector and may, in fact, dump their products in the Nigerian market. So this is a danger signal if Nigeria doesn't wake up from this slumber and do the necessary things to do to ensure that we capture this market and also capture the African market and beyond. Like I said earlier, I'm going to introduce my guest, and from there, we'll take it. To my right, we have Kes Hammond. Kes, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much.
It's always a pleasure having you. We have a very important one today.
Yeah.
Okay, to my left, we have Paul Wadema. Paul, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure having you, sir. You're welcome. Now, let me start with you, Paul. Textile industry in Nigeria. The issues cannot be overemphasized because of the importance attached to this very sector. Now we have gone back and forth, including trying to also revive them. Some of the efforts maybe yielded a little result, not good enough for the kind of sector that we want in the country. What's your take?
You started by mentioning some possible competition that Nigeria will face from other African countries. But we also need to even capture our local markets because it's an environment that the sector operates directly. If you look at President Muhammadu Buhari's executive order, Executive Order 003,
2017.
2017.
Yes.
which was made to encourage the patronage of local textile industry. That executive order is being observed only on paper. You and I know that most of the government agencies that need garments or use garments as part of their uniforms, like the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the paramilitary, they are not sourcing the textile locally, despite that executive order. Now, if you look at the official agencies of government that use uniform, beginning from the police to what have you, if these ones were to patronize the local textile industry, it would be more than half of what they need to jumpstart the sector. But it's not being done. It's an executive order signed by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Why is it not being obeyed? That is the major issue. It's an indication of how big the problem is in addressing the problem. So we first of all have to cultivate the habit of patronizing made in Nigerian products. And government must lead the way. Because all the agencies of government, paramilitary, military, and what have you, they ought to be sourcing their uniforms, everything about it from Nigeria, from the local market here. They are not doing it. So that is an area that we first of all need to capture before we look outside. This area presently is eluding the country, despite the best effort of the president through the Executive Order 003. So that's part of the major problem. Then the issue of intervention. You mentioned the intervention that the CBN has done. Even in 2010, CBN put almost $300 million in 2010 in this sector. Nobody can really say the impact of that amount of money. If you look at 2010 to these days, what impact did that make? So the interventions of government need to be also reviewed. Look at it. Are we putting the money in a hole? Are we putting it into the right places that we need to put it? It's not only the CBN, even the Bank of Industry. They have put about 30 billion in just to encourage the textile sector. And the result has not been very, very effective. But we hope that the policymakers will look into this and rejig the process and see what needs to be done to revitalize the sector.
All right. I turn it to you, Kes. Mr. Paul mentioned something very important here, that the Executive Order 003 of 2017 issued by the President to the military and parliamentary agencies to begin to patronize local industry, local textile industry. And that hasn't happened. Now the question is, why did it not happen? Is it because they lack the capacity to produce what these paramilitary agencies, government parastatals need? Is it because there is nothing that will happen or no punitive measures that will be put in place to check whether this executive order is being carried out? Is it that there are no legislative oversight on this particular particular executive order to ensure that this is carried out to the letter, so that the Nigerian textile industry will begin to breathe a new life from there?
Some of these things or some of the pronouncements from the presidency are policy instead of law. A policy does not really necessarily have to last beyond the tenure of that government. But if it's a law, if it goes through normal, if the normal protocol is followed, or if it goes through the normal process of legislature,
yes,
yeah, it it lasts beyond the tenure of that government. But besides that, there are many things that have many policies that have been put in place by governments, but they are flouted. I'll give you an example. Not long ago, there was a policy that all government officials or all government-owned cars should be made in Nigeria. If that policy were actually being followed, you have one of our indigenous car manufacturers actually doing better than many of the car manufacturing companies, the foreign car manufacturing companies, because Nigeria is a huge market, and the federal government is a huge public purchaser of these vehicles, but it's not being followed. So these things tend to be flouted. For what reason, we don't know, because we continue to talk about diversifying the economy, and this is one of the sectors that is actually ripe for diversification. Yes. And things seem not to be happening. Mr. Paul mentioned military and paramilitary sourcing their materials from the local market. That is huge. You think about even NYSC.
Yes.
Every year, these people need all of these, textile materials to sew the uniforms.
Huge numbers.
Yes, in huge numbers. So when we talk about economic diversification, these are areas to diversify the economy, but it's not happening because probably the federal government is not actually sticking to the pronouncements. Not only that, you see this the Nigerian culture. The Nigerian culture is, I would say, becoming more globalized than we imagine. Nigerians out there wear their local attire, wherever they are, and people admire these attire, and they come. I can assure you, because from a personal experience, I have gotten a good number of requests from friends who are not Nigerians, asking me, please, can you get this Nigerian attire for me? Can you, those kind of things. So people demand those things. I can also assure you, within this West African sub-region, people come from the Benin Republic, Togo, even as far as Sierra Leone, Liberia. People come from those areas to buy the local attire, the local, our text. People come to buy these things. Unfortunately, these things are being, let me not say mixed, but it's the Chinese are actually producing these things for us. Yes, the Chinese are actually they produce their own version of these our local materials, which tells you that we are not doing our homework. This is an area that actually needs to be explored to diversify the economy.
Yes, indeed, there is an area that needs to be seriously, not just explored, but seriously explored. Paul, the challenge, however, is that you mentioned that a lot of interventionist programs and policies have come into this textile sector, but then with very, very insignificant results. Of course, you can say that if you put 300 million into a project, that project should yield something significant. If you put 50 billion into a project, it should actually yield something significant that can be measured in commensurate terms with the investment made. Now, we want to ask this serious question. Why is it that anytime huge amounts of money is invested in a project in Nigeria, there's every likelihood that you're not going to get that result? Especially in this sector that is very important to us like this. Is it a question of dysfunctionality within the system, or can we attribute it to something else like corruption? Is there no way we can check that? knowing fully well that this has now, it's not something that there's an urgency here because of the competitiveness of this market. I just mentioned countries in Africa that are in the world map of those who export textile, materials.
I think the summary of it is corruption. Corruption has eaten deep in virtually all the sectors in Nigeria. So you can say that the textile sector is not an exception. And many of these interventions were done during democracy. Within this our democracy, this dispensation. And some of these interventions oftentimes become instruments of political patronage to the level that the ability to monitor how the money moves, tracking the money becomes very difficult. Those who are saddled with the responsibility of monitoring the money flow,
Yes.
they will turn a blind eye even when things are going wrong. That is basically it. Because these interventions, if it were commercial banks that actually were involved, perhaps they would do a bit better in terms of tracking the money and punishing the culprits who siphon it outside what it was targeted for.
Yes.
So that is basically it. We need to have a policy that has a tracking mechanism so that whatever money is put out can be monitored, and there are people monitoring it to make sure that it gets to the real target. So that is what we need to do in terms of our policy. We can go and learn how other countries are doing this kind of interventions. It's not used as a political patronage. It is used to revitalize the economy. And there are if you are putting money in a sector, you should be able to have a mechanism for good monitoring.
Yes.
So that is what is lacking. And until we tackle that, we will continue to have problems. And we keep on throwing money at things without much result. But like I used to say, when things are going wrong, sometimes you also see opportunities opening up. For example, the new governor of Anambra State, Professor Charles Soludo, he has made efforts, and from the way he's speaking, he's ready to throw money, but you can bet that he's somebody who will track the money. Because leadership is important in fighting corruption.
Yes.
You can see that most of the clothes he wears since he became governor are of Akwete brand.
Yes.
Are you getting it?
Yes.
And I understand that because of what he has done, the Akwete makers can no longer keep up with the others that are flooding in. The women are busy. He has, within a short time, rejigged or revitalized the Akwete sector.
Just by leadership.
Yes, just by leadership alone. Are you getting it? And it's not rocket science.
Yes.
In Asaba, they have aquaculture they can produce locally there. You have Ashoke. Are you getting it?
Yes.
So these are things that our people should be proud to be wearing, that can be able to revitalize the sector within and capture the market here before you begin to worry about your competitors, because you need to put your house in order. You need to hold your market. It's just like Nigeria is now. Nigerian music market has been captured by homegrown musicians. People struggle from outside Nigeria. The other time I was watching Ghanaians complaining that Nigeria don't play their music. But you and I know in this country, there was a time you tune a radio station, you hardly hear Nigerian jam. Everyone was playing American music and stuff. But today you hardly hear American music. It was as if Nigeria blocked the whole world out. But our music is dominating this country. They have captured this market and they are now capturing the world. And that is what you can do in any sector. First of all, capture the home ground. So the textile sector need to capture the 200 million Nigerians to be clothed. It's not a small amount.
All right, we'll go on a short break. When we'll come back, we'll continue with the discussion. Don't go away.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us on Leadership Podcast and we're on Money Radio, we're talking about how to revive the Nigeria textile and garment industry in order to boost the national economy. I've been in the studio with Paul Wadima and Kes Hammond. Kes, let me turn to you before we went to that short break. A lot of people who still remain in the industry are complaining so much about lack of adequate support, like funding, and of course the question of poor infrastructure, poor power supply, for instance, has hindered a lot of development in that area. You and I know very well that a country as big as Nigeria with 200 million population was still struggling with about 4,000 megawatts of electricity. That is very, very unheard of in the world, where you have such huge number of people struggling with 4,000 megawatts of electricity. Is a disincentive for business. It's a disincentive for industrialization, and certainly in this very important sector. Well, how do we revive this? How do we tackle this serious issue so that we can use electricity to power this industry?
The previous picture we were seeing on the screen here, you were seeing machines, sewing machines. Those things are powered by electricity.
Yes.
Let me start by saying that this electricity issue is not today. I just saw a picture of a front page newspaper of the 80s. Yeah, on the front page of the newspaper of the 80s, where Nigerians were also complaining. That was 1988. The complaint of electricity was as far back as then. So this issue of electricity is not today. It has been
some time immemorial.
Yes, for time immemorial. But the garment industry was still thriving around that time. From the growing of cotton.
Yes.
That employs people also. To processing the cotton, ginning, and all of that, turning them into the cloth that we have. So all of those things. The problem that actually, in my opinion, stalled the garment industry is when this competition started. Competition, your economy is open to foreign competition.
Yes.
And of course, their sources of credit, single digit, 2-3%. Whereas our sources of credit here, we have 13, 14, 15%. In some areas,
even 22%. Yes.
And then you have electricity. Nigeria actually produces around, according to a report, 70,000 megawatts of electricity much of that production is actually what you and I generate, that is from our generators or from our plants, our local plants.
Okay, we're not using local
Yes,
plants.
actually, the national grid is just 4,000,
4,000.
but we use generators. So
That's not national grid.
that's not national grid. So we put all of that together. We have up to 70,000 megawatts that we produce in the country, but it is expensive producing electricity on your own. Yes. So if you have to buy gasoline, take for example the fuel,
Yes.
the diesel. Take for example how much fuel costs right now. And then to get it in all of that, all of these things actually are costly. Whereas the foreign competitors, you have it, you have a cheap loan,
Or cheap loans.
you have
and
electricity,
you know.
and also
So many things, so many incentives like that. So why wouldn't they be
you know,
competitive?
right now, Nigeria, because we still have cheap labor compared to the likes of the so-called China.
Yes.
Of course, in China, places like China, Bangladesh, they have grown to certain economic level now of the per capita income. More is being demanded. Employees are demanding more from the employers in terms of wage. So we still have relatively cheap labor. What we don't have cheap is infrastructure. That is killing the industry. It continues to kill the industry. You see, the market is still here. The market, the local market, but just to go beyond what Mr. Paul Wadima mentioned, we have the market is still here. We need to capture it. But even as we are yet we are yet able to, or we are unable to capture the local market not because of low demand, but because of low supply. Yes, that market has not actually been satisfied yet. And besides satisfying that market, you have people that are coming for Nigerian textile, but we are not able to satisfy the local market, not to talk about the regional market and then the foreign market. So all of these things, we have to improve on infrastructure. That infrastructure, once the improvement is done in that area, you can rest assured that this industry will actually thrive, and economic diversification will be achieved, and everybody will be happy for it.
Okay, we have just a couple of seconds to go. Paul, I wanted to ask you about this 2015 national policy or national draft national cotton, textile, and garment policy framework. Why has it not been able to be activated and implemented, especially now that it's urgent for us to put this into proper use?
I think it's basically a question of priority. The government has not prioritized it. It's not one of the issues that bothers the government. And it's also not in the front burner of public discourse, whether in the media or elsewhere. So when the government discovers that an issue is not bothering it, the society is not paying attention, because even the society is also complicit on what is going on in the sector. Why I say this is because the society itself has been conscientized to value imported things more than local products. So many of them are ready to accept whatever is imported into the country. So anything that is done to encourage the home sector, the plan that is laid, doesn't bother them. Unless, that's why leadership is everything. Unless there's a drive. Because what we have seen is that the plan is good on paper, but what is the drive to pursue it? What is the drive? I use Professor Soludo to show you somebody wanted to drive something.
Yes.
Leadership needs to drive a plan. It's just the same way that a national livestock plan is there. How are they driving it now? Sometimes there's some killings. It became an issue of discourse. If there's no killing for some time, nobody talks about it. So that is how it is in virtually all the policies of this country, policy inconsistency. That is a major issue that need to be addressed. Yes.
Having said that,
yes.
my final word, you need to be commended because in the studio here today, you are showing a good example by what you're wearing. And of course, Mr. Paul. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, before you praise me, better be careful. You better be sure where this material comes from.
No, this one is from Havana.
Okay.
Okay. I've been in the studio with Paul Wadima and Kes Hammond, doing justice to this very important topic of how Nigeria can revive the textile and the garment industry in order to boost the Nigerian economy, especially now that we talk so much about economic diversification. It's on that note that we'll call it a day on this very important segment of Money Radio. I will promise to bring you a bumper edition when next will come. Bye.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.